The Great Hall of the Galactic Council buzzed with nervous energy. Representatives from dozens of worlds sat in their assigned seats, waiting for the emergency session to begin. The curved walls stretched high above them, covered in symbols from every member species. At the center of the room, a large holographic display showed the current galactic map. Ambassador Crixval of the Zephyrian Empire stood at the speaking platform. His scaled skin gleamed under the bright lights and his forearms gestured dramatically as he spoke. The Zephyrians were known throughout the galaxy for their love of war and conquest. Their recent victories against smaller worlds had made other species nervous. Fellow council members, Crixval began, his voice echoing through the chamber. Today I bring news that will reshape our galaxy. The Zephyrian Empire has decided to bring order to the chaotic human settlements in the Outer Rim. A wave of shocked murmurs swept through the assembly. The elderly Valdorian representative, Councillor Thys, leaned forward in her seat. Her long, graceful neck extended as she studied the Zephyrian ambassador with concern. The Valdorians were one of the oldest species in the council, and their wisdom was respected by all. Ambassador Crixval, Thys said carefully, surely you do not mean military action against our human colleagues. They have been peaceful members of this council for 40 years. Crixval's laugh was harsh and grating. Peaceful? Yes, they are. Peaceful. Too peaceful. They have grown soft in their comfortable colonies. They spread across dozens of worlds like some kind of infection, but they have no real strength, no military power, no warrior spirit. The Nexari representative, a being, made of what looked like living crystal, pulsed with different colors as it processed this information. The Nexari were known for their logical thinking and careful planning. The humans have never shown aggression toward any council member, it stated in its musical voice. What justification does the Empire claim for this action? Justification? Crixval's four eyes narrowed. They exist in space that could be better used by stronger species. They waste fertile worlds on their small farms and peaceful cities. The Zephyrian Empire will teach them the proper way to use such resources. In the human section of the chamber, Ambassador Chen sat quietly. She was a middle-aged woman with graying hair and calm brown eyes. Unlike many other representatives who wore elaborate robes or ceremonial armor, she dressed simply in a dark, blue uniform. She had been the human representative for 15 years, and everyone knew her as a skilled diplomat who always sought peaceful solutions. Chen listened to Crixval's words without showing any emotion. Her hands rested calmly in her lap as the Zephyrian continued his speech. The human colonies are spread thin across their territory, Crixval continued. They have maybe a dozen small patrol ships for each world. Their weapons are outdated. Their soldiers are farmers who play at being guards. It will take the Zephyrian fleet less than one galactic cycle to bring them under proper control. Elder Councillor Thys stood up slowly. At over 300 years old, she had seen many conflicts and knew the terrible cost of war. Ambassador Crixval, I must strongly advise against this course of action. The humans have been valuable members of our council. They have shared their medical knowledge, their art, their technology. They have never threatened anyone. Exactly. Crixval slammed one of his 4 fists on the speaking platform. They are weak. They give away their secrets freely. They help their enemies. This is not the behavior of a strong species. The galaxy needs strength, not weakness. The Etherian observer in the far corner of the chamber remained silent. The Etherians rarely spoke during council sessions, but their presence was always felt. They were an ancient race that claimed to have existed since before most other species had developed space travel. Their representative, a tall figure wrapped in flowing robes that seemed to shift between different colors, watched the proceedings with interest. The Zephyrian Empire has made its decision, Crixval announced. Our war fleets are already moving toward human space. We expect to begin operations within 7 standard days. This is not a request for council approval. This is a notice of our intentions. The chamber erupted in voices as representatives began talking all at once. Some species called for emergency votes. Others demanded more information. A few smaller species that lived near Zephyrian space looked terrified that they might be next. Through all the noise, Ambassador Chen remained seated and quiet. She made a few notes on her datapad but showed no signs of panic or anger. When the noise finally died down, she stood up calmly. "Honored council members," she said in a clear voice that carried easily through the chamber. "I request a private session with the full council after Ambassador Krixval has finished his presentation." Krixval turned to look at her with amusement. "Do you wish to beg for mercy, human? Perhaps you want to discuss surrender terms before your colonies are even attacked?" Chen met his gaze steadily. "I simply wish to provide the council with some additional information that may be relevant to this situation." "Additional information?" Krixval laughed again. "What information could you possibly have that would matter? Your species has no secrets from the council. You share everything freely, remember? That is what makes you weak." "Nevertheless," Chen replied calmly, "I believe the council should hear what I have to say before any final decisions are made." Councillor Thias nodded slowly. "The human representative has the right to address the council. We will hear her statement after this session concludes." Krixval shrugged with all four arms. "It will not matter. In 7 days, the Zephyrian fleet will be in human space. In 14 days, it will all be over. The humans can use their time to prepare surrender documents instead of funeral plans. The Empire is feeling generous today." As the session continued, various council members tried to find diplomatic solutions. They suggested mediation, economic agreements, even territorial exchanges. But Krixval rejected every proposal. The Zephyrian Empire had decided on war and nothing would change their minds. The Nexari representative calculated resource costs. The Valdorians spoke of honor and ancient treaties. Smaller species worried about the precedent this would set. But through it all, Ambassador Chen sat quietly, occasionally taking notes but never speaking again. When the official session finally ended, Krixval strutted out of the chamber with his entourage. His confidence was absolute. The Zephyrians had the largest military fleet in the galaxy. They had conquered a dozen worlds in the past century. What could a peaceful species like humanity possibly do to stop them? As the chamber emptied, only the core council members remained. Thias, the Nexari representative, the Etherian observer, and a few others from the most influential species. They all turned to look at Ambassador Chen, who was gathering her materials, with the same calm efficiency she always showed. "Ambassador Chen," Thias said gently, "we will listen to whatever you wish to tell us. Perhaps together, we can find a way to prevent this tragedy." Chen looked up at the assembled representatives. For just a moment, something flickered in her eyes. It was gone so quickly that most of the aliens missed it, but the ancient Etherian observer saw it clearly. It was not fear or sadness. It was pity. "Thank you, Councillor Thias," Chen said quietly. "I think it is time the council learned some things about humanity that we have kept to ourselves. Things we hoped we would never need to discuss." The private chamber was much smaller than the main council hall. Only 7 representatives remained, the core members who had the authority to make emergency decisions for the entire Galactic Council. The lights were dimmed to a comfortable level, and the ancient stone walls seemed to absorb sound, creating an atmosphere of intimate conversation. Ambassador Chen stood at the center of the room while the others took their seats in a circle around her. Councillor Thias folded her long hands in her lap and waited patiently. The Nexari representative's crystalline body pulsed with soft blue light, indicating deep thought. The Etherian observer remained motionless in their flowing robes. "What I am about to tell you," Chen began, "my government hoped would never become necessary. For 40 years, humanity has been a member of this council. In that time, we have shared our knowledge freely. Our medical advances have saved millions of lives across dozens of species. Our agricultural techniques have ended famines on 7 worlds. Our art and music have brought joy to countless beings." She paused and looked at each representative in turn. "But there are aspects of human nature that we have deliberately kept hidden. Not because we are ashamed of them, but because we hoped they would never be relevant in a peaceful galaxy." Thias leaned forward slightly. "What aspects, Ambassador Chen?" Chen activated a small holographic projector. The air above it shimmered, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images from Earth's history. Ancient battles, medieval sieges, modern wars. The alien representatives watched in growing fascination and horror as humanity's violent past unfolded before them. My species evolved on a world that was constantly trying to kill us, Chen explained. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years, volcanic eruptions that blocked out the sun, plagues that wiped out entire continents. And through it all, we survived by becoming the most adaptable and ruthless predators our planet ever produced. The hologram shifted to show human soldiers in action, not the peaceful farmers that Krixval had mocked, but disciplined warriors moving with deadly precision. The Nexari representative's light shifted to a shocked orange color. But your people are peaceful, Theiss protested. You have not fought a major war in over 2 centuries. We chose to be peaceful, Chen corrected. That is not the same thing as being incapable of war. When humans reached the stars and discovered we were not alone, we made a collective decision. We had seen what our own capacity for violence could do to our homeworld. We decided that we would be better than our history. The hologram changed again, showing human colonies across the galaxy. But now the representatives were seeing them, with new eyes. What had looked like simple farming settlements now revealed their true nature. Every building was positioned for optimal defense. Every settlement had clear fields of fire. Every colonist had access to weapons and training. Your colonies are fortified, the Nexari observed, its voice containing notes of surprise. This was not apparent in our surveys. We build everything to look peaceful and welcoming, Chen agreed. But underneath, every human settlement is designed to be defended. We have been preparing for this possibility since the day we joined the council. She gestured to the hologram, which now showed what looked like civilian transport ships. But as the image rotated, the representatives could see weapon ports cleverly disguised as cargo bays, armor plating hidden behind decorative panels, and engine configurations that suggested these ships could move much faster than their official specifications claimed. How many ships do humans actually possess? Theiss asked quietly. Chen was silent for a moment. Ambassador Krixval believes we have perhaps a dozen patrol ships per world. That is what our official records show, and it is technically accurate. What those records do not show is that every human civilian vessel can be converted to military use within hours. Every cargo ship can carry troops. Every passenger liner can become a command vessel. Every mining platform can serve as a fortress. The Etherian observer spoke for the first time in the session. Their voice was like wind through ancient trees, carrying knowledge from centuries past. You have hidden your true strength from us. We have hidden our true nature, Chen corrected gently. Ambassador, your people have existed for millennia. You have seen species rise and fall. You know what happens when a warrior race gains the power to travel between stars. The Etherian nodded, slowly. They conquer. They consume. They destroy. Exactly. Humans learned that lesson on our own world. We nearly destroyed ourselves multiple times before we learned to control our aggressive instincts. When we joined the galactic community, we made a promise to ourselves and to you. We would be protectors, not conquerors. Chen changed the hologram, again, showing human military exercises that had been classified until now. The representatives watched in amazement as human forces demonstrated tactics that none of them had ever seen before. Coordinated attacks that seemed to predict enemy movements, defensive strategies that turned the enemy's own strength against them. Most disturbing of all, a form of warfare that seemed designed not just to defeat an enemy, but to completely break their will to fight. This is psychological warfare, the Nexari stated, its crystalline structure now pulsing with alarmed red light. You are not just defeating your opponents, you are mentally destroying them. Humans excel at understanding the psychology of their enemies, Chen confirmed. We spent thousands of years fighting each other. We learned to think like our opponents, to predict their actions, to manipulate their emotions and decisions. It is a skill that has served us well in diplomacy and trade, but it can also be used in war. Theiss stood up abruptly, her elegant form trembling slightly. Ambassador Chen, Are you telling us that humanity has been deceiving the Council for 40 years? That you have been preparing for war while pretending to be peaceful? Chen met her gaze steadily. I am telling you that humanity has been keeping the galaxy peaceful while preparing to defend that peace if necessary. Every conflict that has been resolved through diplomacy, every trade dispute that ended in compromise, every territorial disagreement that was settled without bloodshed, humans have been working behind the scenes to make those peaceful solutions possible. She gestured to another holographic display, this one showing incident reports from across the galaxy. 17 potential wars prevented through careful intervention, 23 trade conflicts resolved through strategic mediation, 41 territorial disputes settled through creative compromise. The Council credits its own wisdom for the peace we have enjoyed. But the truth is that humanity has been actively maintaining that peace. The representatives sat in stunned silence as they absorbed this information. Finally, the Nexari spoke. Why are you telling us this now? Because Ambassador Crix Val is about to attack human colonies with the largest military fleet in the galaxy, Chen replied simply. And when he does, he is going to discover that humans are not the helpless farmers he believes us to be. The Zephyrian Empire is about to learn what happens when you threaten a species that has spent its entire existence becoming the perfect warriors. She turned off the holographic projector, leaving the chamber in relative darkness. I wanted you to understand what you are about to witness, not because I am proud of what will happen, but because I need you to know that humanity has not chosen this path. It has been forced upon us. Thais slowly sank back into her seat. How many Zephyrians will die? Chen was quiet for a long moment before answering. That depends entirely on how quickly Ambassador Crix Val realizes his mistake and orders his forces to surrender. Humans have no desire to destroy the Zephyrian Empire, but we will not allow our colonies to be conquered. The Etherian observer stood up, their robes rustling in the silence. The Council should prepare for the possibility that the galaxy's balance of power is about to shift dramatically. Chen nodded. I recommend that the Council establish emergency communication channels with all member species. In the coming days, there may be many questions about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Questions that will require honest answers. As the representatives filed out of the chamber, each lost in their own thoughts, Chen remained behind. She stood alone in the dim light, looking at the empty holographic projector. Somewhere in space, Zephyrian war fleets were moving toward human colonies, confident in their superiority. They had no idea what was waiting for them. Admiral Vextor stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Crimson Dominance, watching the stars streak past through the main viewport. Around him, his officers worked at their stations with the confident efficiency of a species that had conquered dozens of worlds. The Zephyrian war fleet stretched out in all directions, 200 ships strong, representing the most powerful military force in the galaxy. Status report, Vextor commanded, his forearms clasped behind his back in the traditional pose of Zephyrian authority. All ships report ready for combat operations, his tactical officer responded. We will reach the first human settlement in 6 hours. New Geneva appears to be a typical agricultural colony with minimal defenses. Vextor nodded with satisfaction. The intelligence reports had confirmed what Ambassador Crix Val had claimed. Human colonies were spread thin across their territory, protected by nothing more than a few patrol ships and some basic defensive platforms. It would be like harvesting fruit from an unguarded tree. Have the propaganda officers prepared their surrender demands? He asked. Yes, Admiral. The messages have been translated into the human language. We will broadcast them as soon as we enter their space. 6 hours later, the massive Zephyrian fleet dropped out of hyperspace at the edge of the New Geneva system. The planet hung before them like a blue and green jewel, its surface dotted with the organized patterns of human settlements. Orbital platforms drifted lazily around the world, looking exactly like the agricultural processing stations described in their intelligence reports. Scan for defensive installations, Vextor ordered. Admiral, I am detecting 12 orbital platforms and 4 patrol ships, the sensor operator reported. No military installations visible on the surface, no heavy weapons signatures. The humans appear to be following their normal civilian routines. Vextor smiled, showing his rows of sharp teeth. Begin the attack. Target their orbital platforms first. I want them to understand their helplessness before we offer terms of surrender. The first wave of Zephyrian fighters launched from their carriers, sleek ships designed for rapid strikes against weak defenses. They streaked toward the human orbital platforms, weapons charging for what should have been an easy first victory. But as the fighters approached their targets, something unexpected happened. The orbital platforms suddenly bloomed with energy signatures that the Zephyrian sensors had never detected before. Hidden weapon ports opened along their surfaces, revealing arrays of defensive systems that had been completely invisible until the moment they activated. "What is happening?" Vextor demanded as alarms began sounding on his bridge. "Admiral, the human platforms are firing. Heavy plasma cannons, missile batteries, some kind of energy weapon I do not recognize. Our lead squadrons are taking heavy casualties." On the main screen, Vextor watched in shock as his supposedly superior fighters were being systematically destroyed by weapons that should not have existed. The human orbital platforms moved with mechanical precision, their defensive fire creating a wall of destruction that his pilots could not penetrate. "Impossible," he muttered. "Our intelligence showed no military installations." "Admiral," his communications officer called out urgently, "we are receiving a transmission from the human colony. Put it through." The main screen flickered and the face of a human appeared. It was a woman with gray hair and calm eyes wearing what looked like a farmer's work clothes. She spoke in a steady voice that somehow carried more authority than any Zephyrian war cry. "Zephyrian Fleet, this is Director Sarah Martinez of New Geneva Colony. You have committed an act of war against a peaceful settlement. You have 60 seconds to withdraw your forces beyond the system boundary, or we will consider you a hostile invasion force and respond accordingly." Vextor laughed harshly. "Respond accordingly? Human, you are facing the might of the Zephyrian Empire. Your pathetic colony cannot stand against our war fleet." The human woman's expression did not change. 50 seconds. "Admiral," his tactical officer interrupted, "our fighter squadrons are requesting immediate support. The human defenses are far more powerful than anticipated." "Then send in the destroyers." Vextor snarled. "Show these farmers what real weapons can do." A dozen Zephyrian destroyers moved forward, their heavy guns charging. These were ships that had reduced fortified worlds to rubble. Surely they could handle a few disguised agricultural platforms. But as the destroyers closed with their targets, the human colony's true nature began to reveal itself. What had looked like simple transport ships suddenly dropped their disguised hulls, revealing sleek military vessels bristling with weapons. Buildings on the planet's surface opened up to expose missile silos and defensive batteries. The entire colony transformed from a peaceful farming settlement into a military fortress in a matter of minutes. 30 seconds, the human director said calmly. "All ships open fire!" Vextor roared. "Destroy everything!" The Zephyrian fleet unleashed its full firepower at the human colony. Energy beams and missiles filled the space around New Geneva. It was enough destructive power to level a dozen worlds. But the humans were ready. Their defensive systems activated with mechanical precision. Energy shields deflected incoming fire. Point defense systems destroyed missiles before they could reach their targets. Counter-battery fire reached out from the planet and orbital platforms, striking the Zephyrian ships with devastating accuracy. "Admiral, we are taking heavy damage," his tactical officer reported. "The human weapons are penetrating our shields as if they were not there." Vextor stared at the tactical display in growing horror. His fleet, which had seemed so powerful minutes before, was being systematically dismantled by an enemy that should not have been able to fight back at all. "How is this possible?" he whispered. His sensor operator's voice was shaky as he made his report. "Admiral, I am detecting additional human ships approaching from the outer system. 20, 30. I count at least 50 vessels moving to intercept us." "Time's up," the human director said from the main screen. Her calm voice cut through the chaos on the bridge like a blade. "You have chosen to continue your attack on a peaceful colony. The New Geneva Defense Force is now authorized to use all necessary force to repel your invasion." The space around New Geneva suddenly filled with human ships. They moved with a coordination that Vextor had never seen before, each vessel perfectly positioned to support the others. Their weapons fire was precise and devastating, targeting the Zephyrian ship's most vulnerable points with surgical accuracy. But what shocked Vextor most was not the humans' firepower or their defensive capabilities. It was their tactics. The AO. Human ships moved like a single organism, predicting his fleet's maneuvers before his own officers could execute them. They seemed to understand Zephyrian military doctrine better than the Zephyrians themselves. "Admiral, the humans are jamming our communications," his communications officer reported. "Our ships cannot coordinate properly. They are using some kind of psychological warfare against our crews," added his tactical officer. "Our pilots are reporting confusion and disorientation." Vextor watched in horror as his supposedly invincible fleet was being outfought, outmaneuvered, and outthought by an enemy that his people had dismissed as weak farmers. His ships were being destroyed not through superior numbers or better weapons, but through superior understanding of warfare itself. "Admiral," his sensor operator called out, "I am detecting human reinforcements arriving from multiple systems. We are about to be vastly outnumbered." For the first time in his military career, Admiral Vextor felt something he had never experienced before: fear. Not fear of death or defeat, but fear of the unknown. The humans were not what the Zephyrian Empire had believed them to be. They were something far more dangerous. "Send a message to the fleet," he ordered quietly. "All ships are to withdraw to the system boundary immediately." "Admiral?" his tactical officer asked in confusion. "Are we retreating?" Vextor looked at the tactical display showing his fleet being systematically destroyed by an enemy that had revealed itself to be far more than they appeared. "We are not retreating," he said grimly. "We are trying to survive long enough to warn the Empire what we have encountered." On the main screen, the human director's face remained calm and professional as she watched the Zephyrian fleet begin its withdrawal. "Zephyrian vessels, you are cleared to leave the system. Any attempt to return will be met with immediate and overwhelming force." As his damaged fleet limped away from New Geneva, Vextor realized that the Zephyrian Empire had made a terrible mistake. They had not attacked a colony of peaceful farmers. They had attacked humanity. And humanity, it seemed, was very different from what anyone in the galaxy had believed. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been running for 18 hours straight. Representatives from across the galaxy filled the great chamber, their voices creating a constant buzz of worried conversation. Holographic displays showed real-time reports from the human Zephyrian conflict zone, and the information coming in was shocking everyone present. Counselor Thys stood at the central podium, her ancient voice carrying clearly through the chamber. "We have now received confirmed reports from 7 different systems," she announced. "In every case, Zephyrian forces have been defeated by human defensive units. The pattern is consistent and unprecedented." The Nexari representative's crystalline body pulsed with rapid color changes, indicating extreme agitation. The mathematical probability of this outcome was less than 3% based on our previous intelligence. Clearly, our understanding of human military capabilities was fundamentally flawed. Across the chamber, representatives from dozens of species watched the tactical displays with growing amazement and concern. The Zephyrian Empire, which had terrorized smaller worlds for over a century, was being systematically defeated by a species that most council members had considered peaceful farmers and traders. "How is this possible?" demanded the Crithari ambassador, his insect-like features twitching with nervousness. "The Zephyrians have the most powerful fleet in the galaxy. They have conquered 12 worlds in the last 50 years. Ambassador Chen sat quietly in the human section, occasionally taking notes but not participating in the heated discussions around her. Her calm presence seemed almost unnatural, given that her species was currently engaged in the largest military conflict the galaxy had seen in centuries. A new voice joined the conversation from the back of the chamber. The Etherean observer rarely spoke during council sessions, but when they did, everyone listened. Their ancient musical voice cut through the noise like a blade. "I believe it is time for a history lesson," the Etherean said, rising from their seat. Their flowing robes seemed to shift between different colors as they moved to the center of the chamber. With the Council's permission, I would like to share some information about humanity that we have kept in our archives. Thys nodded immediately. The Etherians were the oldest species in the Council, and their historical knowledge was unmatched. Please, honored observer, any light you can shed on this situation would be welcome. The Etherian activated a holographic projector, and suddenly the chamber was filled with images from Earth's distant past. But these were not the peaceful scenes that humans usually shared with the Council. These showed massive armies clashing across continents, cities under siege, and weapons of terrible destructive power. The human species evolved on a world that was constantly at war, the Etherian explained. Not just war between different groups of humans, but war against their entire environment. Ice ages that lasted for millennia. Volcanic eruptions that blocked out their sun for years. Diseases that killed half their population. Asteroid impacts that reshaped their continents. The images shifted to show human technology advancing through the centuries. Simple stone weapons gave way to bronze, then iron, then steel. The representatives watched in fascination as human warfare evolved from primitive clubs to sophisticated military machines. What makes humans unique, the Etherian continued, is not their capacity for violence. Many species are violent. What makes them unique is their ability to learn from that violence and adapt their strategies accordingly. Every defeat taught them something new. Every victory showed them a better way to fight. The Krathri ambassador's mandibles clicked nervously. But they have been peaceful for over 2 centuries. Surely they have lost these abilities. The Etherian's laugh was like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Have they? Or have they simply channeled their natural abilities into other areas? Think about human diplomacy. They are renowned for their ability to understand other species' motivations and find solutions that satisfy everyone. Where do you think that skill comes from? The chamber fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. The humans' legendary diplomatic abilities were not separate from their warrior nature. They were an expression of it. They have been studying us, the Nexari representative said, its voice filled with awe and concern. For 40 years they have been learning how we think, how we fight, how we make decisions. New tactical reports began streaming in from the conflict zone. The Council watched in amazement as human forces demonstrated military capabilities that seemed impossible. They were not just defeating Zephyrian ships, they were predicting their movements, anticipating their strategies, and countering their tactics before the Zephyrians could even implement them. Look at this engagement in the Kepler 4I42 system, pointed out the Altarian representative, manipulating the holographic display. The humans allowed the Zephyrian fleet to enter the system and begin their attack pattern. Then they sprung a trap that the Zephyrians walked into perfectly. It is as if the humans knew exactly what the Zephyrians would do. Because they did know, Ambassador Chen spoke for the first time during the session. Her quiet voice somehow carried to every corner of the chamber. My species has been observing Zephyrian military tactics for decades. We know their fleet formations, their command structure, their standard operating procedures. We know how they think. She stood up slowly, and every eye in the chamber turned to her. When the Zephyrian Empire conquered the Vardani homeworld 15 years ago, human observers were present. When they subjugated the Tellurian colonies 8 years ago, we watched and learned. Every Zephyrian victory has been studied and analyzed by human military strategists. The implications of this statement sent shockwaves through the assembly. The humans had been preparing for this conflict for decades, learning everything they could about their potential enemies while those enemies remained completely ignorant of human capabilities. You have been planning for war while preaching peace? Accused the Zephyrian trade representative, one of the few Zephyrians who had remained on the council station instead of returning to the Empire. We have been planning for defense while working for peace, Chen corrected firmly. There is a difference. Every diplomatic solution we helped broker, every conflict we mediated, every trade agreement we facilitated, all of it was done with Yao, the genuine hope that military action would never be necessary. She gestured to the tactical displays showing the ongoing battles. But we also knew that there were species in this galaxy who respected only strength. We hoped we were wrong about the Zephyrian Empire. We hoped that their recent conquests were aberrations that could be resolved through diplomacy. More reports came in from across human space. The pattern was becoming clear to everyone in the chamber. This was not a desperate defense by overwhelmed colonists. This was a carefully planned military campaign being executed with precision and overwhelming force. The humans are not just defending their colonies, observed the Valdorian military advisor who had been analyzing the tactical data. They are systematically destroying the Zephyrian fleet's ability to wage war. They are targeting command ships, supply vessels, and communication arrays. They are dismantling the Empire's military infrastructure. Theiss looked directly at Ambassador Chen. How many ships do humans actually possess? Chen was quiet for a moment before answering. Every human, civilian vessel can be converted to military use within hours. Every colony has hidden defensive installations. Every settlement has trained militia forces. The ships you are seeing in these battles represent perhaps 10% of humanity's actual military capacity. The chamber erupted in shocked voices. If what Chen was saying was true, then humanity possessed the largest military force in galactic history. And they had kept it completely hidden for 40 years. The Etherian observer nodded slowly. Now you begin to understand. Humans are not a peaceful species that learned to fight. They are a warrior species that chose to be peaceful. But when that peace is threatened, they remember what they truly are. A new report flashed on the main display. The Zephyrian Second Fleet, attempting to reinforce their beleaguered forces, had been intercepted by human ships at the edge of their own territory. The entire fleet had been forced to surrender without firing a shot. They are not even fighting in human space anymore, whispered the Krathari ambassador. They have taken the war to the Zephyrians. Ambassador Chen looked around the chamber at the shocked faces of her fellow council members. My species hoped this day would never come. We hoped that the galaxy could remain peaceful through diplomacy and mutual understanding. But Ambassador, Crix Val made that impossible when he chose to attack our colonies. She paused, and when she spoke again, her voice carried a weight that none of them had ever heard from her before. The Zephyrian Empire declared war on humanity. They are about to learn what that actually means. In the silence that followed, everyone in the chamber realized that they were witnessing a fundamental shift in galactic power. The species they had thought they knew had revealed itself to be something entirely different, and the galaxy would never be the same. 3 weeks after the invasion began, Ambassador Crix Val returned to the Galactic Council chambers. But the proud, arrogant figure who had announced his empire's intentions was gone. In his place stood a broken individual whose forearms hung limply at his sides, his scaled skin dull and scarred from recent battles. The great chamber buzzed with tension as representatives from across the galaxy waited for the emergency session to begin. Word had spread quickly through diplomatic circles about the Zephyrian Empire's catastrophic defeat, but few had seen official confirmation until now. Crix Val approached the speaking platform with slow, measured steps. Gone was the confident swagger that had characterized his previous appearance. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper, forcing the chamber's audio systems to amplify his words. "Honored council members," he began, his voice cracking slightly, "I come before you today to formally request mediation in the conflict between the Zephyrian Empire and humanity." A shocked silence filled the chamber. The Zephyrian Empire, which had never asked for help from anyone, was now begging the council for assistance. 3 weeks ago, the Empire committed its most powerful fleet to what we believed would be a simple pacification mission, Crix Val continued. We expected to bring order to chaotic human settlements within days. Instead, we have lost 80% of our military vessels, and our remaining forces are trapped in human space, completely at their mercy. The tactical displays around the chamber showed the current situation in devastating detail. Zephyrian ships floated powerless in space, their weapons disabled and their crews held prisoner. Entire fleets that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were now helpless, maintained by human forces that seemed to appear and disappear at will. Councillor Theiss stood slowly, her ancient features showing a mixture of sympathy and stern disapproval. Ambassador Crixval, the Council warned your empire against this course of action. You chose to ignore our advice and attack a peaceful member species. What outcome did you expect? We expected victory, Crixval replied honestly. Our intelligence indicated that humans possessed minimal military capabilities. Every report suggested they were a weak species that relied on diplomacy because they lacked the strength for war. He gestured weakly toward the tactical displays. We were wrong. Completely, catastrophically wrong. The humans did not fight like any enemy we had ever encountered. They knew our tactics better than we did. They predicted our strategies before we implemented them. They turned our own aggressive nature against us. The chamber doors opened, and Ambassador Chen entered quietly. But something was different about her. The diplomatic mask she had worn for 15 years had been partially set aside, revealing glimpses of the steel beneath. She wore the same simple blue uniform, but now it seemed less like civilian clothing and more like a military dress uniform. As she walked to the human section, every representative in the chamber watched her with new eyes. This was not the peaceful, farmer's representative they had known. This was someone who had just orchestrated the most decisive military victory in galactic history. Chen took her seat and waited patiently as Crixval continued his statement. The humans offered surrender terms after every engagement, the Zephyrian ambassador said, his voice filled with shame. They could have destroyed our forces completely, but instead they disabled our ships and captured our crews. Even in war, they showed more mercy than the Empire showed in conquest. He turned to look directly at Ambassador Chen. I formally request that the human government accept the Empire's surrender and agree to negotiate terms for the return of our captured forces. Chen stood up calmly and walked to the speaking platform. For a moment, she and Crixval stood face to face, the representative of the galaxy's newest military power and the ambassador of what had been its most feared empire. The human government is prepared to discuss terms, Chen said simply. But first, there must be a formal acknowledgement of wrongdoing and a guarantee that such aggression will never be repeated. Crixval nodded immediately. The Zephyrian Empire formally apologizes to the human colonies that were attacked. We acknowledge that our actions were unprovoked and unjustified. We also formally apologize to the Galactic Council for disrupting the peace that has been maintained for so long. And the guarantee? Chen asked. Crixval's shoulders slumped further. The Empire no longer has the military capacity to threaten anyone. Our fleet is gone. Our military infrastructure has been efficiently dismantled. It will take decades to rebuild, and we have learned the cost of aggression. Chen nodded and turned to address the full council. The human government is prepared to return all captured Zephyrian personnel and vessels. In exchange, we require reparations for the damage done to our colonies and a formal treaty guaranteeing the sovereignty of all council member species. She paused and looked around the chamber. We also believe it is time for an honest discussion about humanity's role in galactic affairs. Thais leaned forward in her seat. What do you mean, Ambassador Chen? For 40 years, humanity has maintained the fiction that we are simply peaceful farmers and traders who happen to be good at diplomacy, Chen explained. But recent events have made it clear that this fiction is no longer sustainable. The galaxy has seen what humans are truly capable of when threatened. She gestured to the tactical displays showing human forces maintaining order in former Zephyrian space. The question now is whether the Council wants humanity to continue pretending to be something we are not, or whether you would prefer an honest relationship based on mutual understanding and respect. The Etherian observer rose from their seat, their ancient voice carrying clearly through the chamber. I believe the time for pretense has passed. The galaxy has seen humanity's true nature, and it would be foolish to ignore the implications. They gestured to the assembled representatives. For centuries, the Galactic Council has struggled to maintain peace between species with conflicting interests. We have succeeded through careful diplomacy and the threat of collective action. But that system only works when all parties believe in the consequences of aggression. The Etherian's robes shifted to a deep purple color, indicating deep thought. Humanity has demonstrated that they possess the capability to enforce galactic peace through strength rather than just negotiation. The question is whether they are willing to accept that responsibility. Chen was quiet for a long moment before responding. Humanity never wanted this responsibility. We hoped that the galaxy could maintain peace through mutual cooperation and understanding. But if the alternative is allowing aggressive species to threaten peaceful worlds, then yes, we are prepared to serve as guarantors of galactic peace. She looked directly at the assembled representatives. But understand what this means. We will not be conquerors or overlords. We will not impose human values or human government on other species. But we will not allow the strong to prey upon the weak, regardless of which species is involved. The chamber fell silent as the implications of this statement sank in. Humanity was offering to become the galaxy's protector species, but on their own terms. Councillor Thies stood slowly. I believe the Council needs to formally acknowledge what has become clear to all of us. Humanity has revealed itself to be the most powerful military force in galactic history. But more importantly, they have shown that this power is guided by principles of justice and restraint. She turned to address the full assembly. I propose that the Council pass the Terran Accords, a formal recognition of humanity's special status as protectors of galactic peace, along with strict protocols governing the use of military force by any member species. The vote was unanimous. Even the Zephyrian representative voted in favor, understanding that his empire's survival now depended on the very peace they had tried to shatter. As the session concluded, Ambassador Chen found herself surrounded by representatives who wanted to understand this new reality, but she answered their questions with the same calm professionalism she had always shown. Nothing fundamental has changed, she told them. Humanity still prefers exploration to conquest, cooperation to domination, peace to war. The only difference is that now you know we have the capability to defend those preferences. Later, as the chamber emptied, Chen stood alone at the great windows looking out at the stars. Somewhere out there, human ships were maintaining order in former Zephyrian space, ensuring that the transition to peace proceeded smoothly. Soon, those ships would return to their normal duties: exploration, research, trade, and the quiet protection of peaceful worlds. Ambassador Crix-Val approached her hesitantly. Ambassador Chen, I must ask, if the Empire had not attacked your colonies, would we ever have learned the truth about humanity? Chen turned to look at him, and for just a moment her diplomatic mask slipped completely. What Crix-Val saw in her eyes was not anger or triumph, but something far more disturbing: pity. Ambassador, she said quietly, humanity has been protecting this galaxy for 40 years. The only difference is that now you know about it. As Crix-Val walked away, contemplating the implications of her words, Chen returned to watching the stars. The galaxy was at peace again, and humanity could return to what they truly preferred: exploring the cosmos,